Our country is facing several crises: the Biden border crisis, the Biden crime crisis, the Biden economic crisis, the Biden energy crisis as we see gas prices go up and up and up, and the employment crisis. I'm constantly hearing, as I travel across my district, it's clear to me that families are hurting from inflation and are worried about illicit drugs flooding their communities because of the crisis at the southern border. I'm constantly hearing from small business owners about how labor shortages are plaguing their ability to hire talented workers. Thankfully, Georgia's governor, Brian Kemp, through his direct order, has ended the extra payments from the federal government so that we can get hardworking Georgians back to work. I'm a small businessman by trade, and I can tell you that small and even large businesses operate a whole lot differently than does the federal government. I mean the fact that the government, or should I say Congress, decides how much we'll spend before even putting a budget together. Is that backwards in and of itself? Not to mention the fact that we're not required to balance our budget every year. No wonder our government is in such poor fiscal condition. As a business owner, I had to work to bring in revenue, which was dependent on consumer demand, on customer service, on community engagement, on marketing, among other things. You also must balance your budget as a small business owner and plan to make adjustments if times are good or if they're tough. If times are good, and hopefully they stay good, benefits typically become more generous than the basic benefits employers provide to retain quality employees. But when times are tough, sometimes you have to adjust to keep people on the payroll because you don't want to let anybody go. You want to keep all your good employees. To the contrary, if the government wants to increase its revenue stream, all it has to do is raise taxes. Easy as that. Flip a switch and more money flows in. But who pays the price for flipping that switch? The American people. And if we don't have the money now, we borrow it. And so who pays the price? Our children. So for Ms. Manning, I have a question for you. I just outlined some ways in which the government operates differently from private employers. And I briefly touched on differences in benefits in good times and bad times. Do the benefits for federal employees get adjusted down when times are tough?
To my knowledge, they do not.
They do not. You're absolutely right. So it sounds like the federal government's benefits are completely stable. And yet, with all these advantages, we're sitting here today considering the chairwoman's proposal to further expand the already generous benefits for federal employees. What do you think that says to the average American, seeing that their federal employee counterparts are getting more benefits than private citizens who are struggling to recover from the pandemic? What do you think that says to the American people, ma'am?
You know, I think we've struggled as a country to maintain wide respect for any type of large institution, whether it's the media or the government or academic institutions. I would love to see greater public trust in those institutions, but I don't think it fosters good public trust when we feel that there's an elite political class who can vote new benefits for themselves or for the federal workforce. And that often, I think, fosters a sense of detachment from the citizens that you serve.
I agree with you. Do you think the federal government needs to make its benefits even more generous than they already are right now to compete for labor?
No, as an economic question, I think it's pretty clear there's no economic necessity of that.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. You know, it's one thing to provide a benefit like this during an extraordinary period like COVID-19, but it's another entirely to make this a permanent benefit for all times, good and bad. Thank you for your response. I appreciate that. You know, I'm a 28-year military officer, and 11 years of that was spent on active duty. And the military gives 30 days of paid leave every year, but that 30 days includes weekends. So if I take straight 30 days, then I have 4 weekends. I have 8 days of weekend days that are included in that paid leave. While I know signing up for active duty is much different than signing up for the civilian workforce, you know, both are public servants, and at the end of the day, their salaries are paid by the taxpayers. So it's, in my opinion, it's egregious that we're sitting here today considering a proposal that would only require federal civil servants to work 9 months of the year. It's an affront to our servicemen and women who sacrifice everything as well as to taxpayers who will be on the hook to pay for the additional benefits. And with that, from the great state of Georgia, I yield back.
The gentleman